Above an ambient temperature of around 28 degrees centigrade, the metabolic processes of our body at rest produce sufficient heat to maintain our core's temperature at the optimal of about 37 degrees centigrade. Below 28 degrees C, we need to expend more energy to generate additional heat in order to maintain core temperature. Shivering thermogenesis is the key mechanism to achieve this. At high ambient temperatures, our body instigates alternate mechanisms to defend core temperature, this time from temperature increases, including sweating and vasodilation of peripheral blood vessels. The thermoneutral zone defines the range of ambient temperatures at which, when we are resting, we do not have to defend core temperature either from decreasing or increasing, and thus our metabolic rate is at a minimum. However, while the lower limit of the thermoneutral zone has been characterized, it is still unclear whether in fact there is an upper limit beyond which resting metabolic rate increases, and if so, what upregulations in our physiology underpin this. Our study investigated whether there are ambient temperatures at which resting metabolic rate in human beings increases. We also measured body movement, multiple body temperatures, sweat rate, and a range of cardiorespiratory variables that could explain a putative increase in metabolic rate as ambient temperature increases. Participants were exposed to each condition while resting supine on a cloth camp bed. The measurements we focus on here were taken after 1 hour. The conditions the participants were exposed to were a control of 28 degrees C in dry air, then experimental conditions of 40 degrees C dry and 40 C humid, and 50 degrees C dry and 50 C humid. Participants undertook the study fasted and experienced the conditions in a randomized order over several days at the same time of day and with considerable rest between each condition. We observed a large 35% increase in metabolic rate when the participants were exposed to 40 degrees C dry air compared to baseline. In this condition, this increase in metabolic rate was not accompanied by an increase in core temperature. The participants fully dissipated any excess heat. Importantly, increases in metabolic rate in our study were not accompanied by increases in movement levels due to the participants feeling uncomfortable. This indicates that the increase in metabolic rate is driven by physiological adjustments. Thus, we conclude that the human thermoneutral zone does have an upper critical temperature, i.e. above which at rest, metabolic rate increases, and that this temperature is at least as low as 40 degrees C. In humid conditions at 50 degrees C, metabolic rate was 56% higher than baseline. We also observed a rise in core body temperature of 1 degree C, indicating that the body was no longer able to dissipate sufficient heat to maintain its core temperature. What could explain this increase in metabolic rate at higher ambient temperatures? The Q10 effect mathematically characterizes the rate of increase in the body's biochemical processes as core temperature increases, which generates an increase in energy consumption. Using the Q10 equation, the 1 degree C increase in body temperature that we measured results in a 7% increase in metabolic rate, and thus the Q10 effect can only explain a small portion of the metabolic rate increases we observed. Heart rate went up considerably at 50 degrees C, which no doubt was accompanied by peripheral vasodilation, and these changes surely account for some of the increase in metabolic rate, but how much is not possible to quantify. The participants' minute ventilation increased considerably, driven by deeper breathing, but the literature indicates that deeper breathing only costs a small amount of energy. In summary, our study shows clear evidence that there is a temperature where people's metabolic rate increases despite being at rest, and that this temperature is at least as low as 40 degrees C. Further studies are required to pinpoint this temperature, assess how it varies with a person's characteristics, and to provide a full explanation of what physiological changes drive this metabolic rate increase. If you'd like to find out more about this research, you can access our paper published in Physiological Reports at the journal's website, or contact the corresponding author.